Rockport's town meeting is Saturday, May 15th. We are speaking with Rockport Town Moderator Bob Visnick, who we're hoping will tell us how town meeting will run and highlights from the warrant. Hi, Bob.
Hi, good morning, Heather. How are you?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
The best.
Good. So tell us right from the start, what will town meeting look like this year?
Well, we were hoping that it would look like a conventional town meeting and be inside the gymnasium or the auditorium and be able to use our clickers, but it looks like we're not quite there yet. And so this meeting will look like the last two meetings in that it will be outside with people having the option to be in their vehicles and to receive input through their radio and to be able to participate the way they have in the last few meetings. And there are tents outside the high school because the high school is using them in its daily activities. So we think we'll be in good shape unless the weather is particularly bad. And if the weather is particularly bad, then you're going to see a lot more gray hair on me and a lot more wrinkles. And we're still walking through what that will look like, but we might have, the meeting inside one of the buildings with the option still for people to be in their vehicles or even out in the rain if they so choose, because we realize that many, but not all people have had the opportunity to get vaccinated. And I think that will determine when we can go back to a more normal way of meeting.
And just to finish that point, while the meetings have been short, the past two town meetings have been very short, they've still worked out pretty successfully with this audio, being able to listen to the audio on the radio and people vote with paddles, right?
Yes. Yes, I think so. And, as you may know from attending some of the meetings, it's my belief as someone who's taught trial advocacy and been involved in the business for years, that the quicker you can make your point, the more effective your point will be. And so I think when we're outside and the weather's a little chilly and we're listening to cows mooing and different things, I think people tended to be more succinct, and that was really helpful. But everybody in town was incredibly cooperative and polite and kind and civil. And we had help from all the major departments and volunteers to put the meeting together. And it was just really a wonderful event, in the spirit of bringing the community together. So the meetings worked out wonderfully. And I'm hoping, of course, for the same.
So Bob, aside from dealing with the pandemic, it's been a bit of a rocky year in Rockport. So let's get into what's on the docket for the town meeting and talk about some of these articles. Do you want to discuss the term limits warrant?
Sure. There are several articles that deal with the running of the town, so to speak. And there are three of them that deal with term limits for I think specifically the Board of Selectmen. And those include P, Q, and V. V was actually a citizen's petition from a year ago that we didn't hear because we were just trying to truncate the warrant, but we will hear it. Town council has opined on these, as has the Government and Bylaw Committee. And I'm speaking with the proponents of these in hopes that we can winnow it down to one or two motions as opposed to trying to figure out how we can sort through all three of them. The one the Government and Bylaw Committee thinks is the most appropriate to go forward is Article Q. And we'll see if we can get down to one, but if we can get down to two, at least I can try to logically put them in order and and make it so that we don't have to have votes on two competing propositions.
These are three articles that refer to term limits for the Board of Selectmen, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And then I'm sorry, go on.
Well, then there's Article N, which right now our Government Bylaw Committee is supposed to review all the miscellaneous bylaws and report on them every decade. and N speeds it up to a review every 5 years. And the Government Bylaw Committee is not in favor of this, I think, because once they get cranking, and quite frankly, we are late on this decennial review. It hasn't happened in the appropriate time. And so to try to speed it up might be a very optimistic thing. What I've suggested to the Government Bylaw Committee, and what I think they're doing, is treating this more or less as a rolling review, and to review some of the bylaws every year. And so they'll be ready, sort of like painting a bridge. You start at one end, you go to the end, and then it's time to start at the beginning. So we will discuss that. I am glad that there is an article having to do with the Government Bylaw Committee, because I think that that committee should be in the forefront, should be doing a lot of things, should be holding hearings, and should be very active. And I'm hopeful that will happen. Article O more or less states that no department can be created, expanded, dissolved, except at town meeting. And so town council has opined on that and said that that is something that is, if it was passed, not lawful. And even if lawful, would be up to the discretion of the Board of Selectmen. So I'm speaking to the proponent of that. That may or may not have a motion, but I think that is part of a reaction to what's gone on over the last year, having to do with the fire department, the personnel board, and things of that nature.
For a second, because we had
Sure.
earlier, and you made a comment about creating laws that are reactionary.
Yeah, I mean, as a general proposition, lawyers say bad facts make bad law, and I guess by extension, if you're creating laws in reaction to a particular event, it's not necessarily bad per se, but it's always good perhaps to let a little time go by and to have a chance to focus not so much on the event that just took place, but on what that event means in a broader context. And so several of these, may or may not be in reaction to the events of the last several years. And I think it's good to discuss all of them. Article W, in that same vein, says that there shall be no compensation for the Board of Selectmen, and I think, in fact, only for the town clerk and moderator. And so that is, I think, in continuation of something that Toby Arsenian proposed and passed a few years ago, which was eliminating compensation and thus health insurance for the Board of Selectmen for that particular year.
So any more favorite articles there, Mr. Visnick?
Well, there are several having to do with transferring town-owned land in environmentally sensitive places to the Conservation Commission. There are some articles that are not mandatory. One having to do with fluoride, Article R, and we have addressed that a few years ago, but it will be addressed again. And there's an Article T, which is an interesting one, having to do with the Seabrook nuclear power plant. And it asks that the town meeting send a letter to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission saying we don't want any radioactive gases and fallout. So that will be an interesting discussion, I believe. And there is an article which is in the way of a resolution recognizing as a principle of law, the intrinsic value of natural lands. And so I think those engender interesting and good discussions. They're not, the hope is not to do something mandatory, but to discuss the issues. I think it's going to be an interesting meeting.
Yeah, I also saw some zoning changes, proposed zoning changes.
Yes.
What are your feelings about that? Is that radical or is it not?
So you may know that the state has made some changes to zoning. And I think that our whole state law and by consequence, our local law on zoning is based on maybe some outdated principles from prior decades. And so I would like to see, much like we're reviewing the entire miscellaneous bylaws, I would love to see, and I think the planning board is starting to work on this, but I would like to see all of our bylaws reviewed, and not just in terms of changes like these, but in terms of our actual policies, the planning that we want for the future, the need for housing, and also the need for green space and to maintain habitat, and to really address the present and the future of Rockport. I think that is that's a very necessary thing. I look at these as I don't want to say band-aid approaches, but approaches that are probably necessary until we do that main review. But I'm really going to get interested in zoning changes when they're really wholesale zoning changes, and we address everything that we need to address to keep Rockport both the way it is and the place where the middle class can live and thrive.
And Bob, as we near the May 15th town meeting date, where can people go to learn more information beforehand?
The town has a very good website, rockportma.gov, and there should be a banner for town meeting.
Gotcha.
And if you're a government groupie, I think you want to go to the finance committee meetings, and those are listed in the agenda. I don't know if the Board of Selectmen is going to meet again to talk about town meeting prior to the meeting. In our budget, there will be the request for an override, and so that's interesting for people who have interest in those fiscal matters. And I think that will be an interesting part of the meeting that we haven't really discussed. But I think the town has a good website, and it's getting better all the time.
Yeah, the warrant is on the website. For
Yes.
Want to read these articles in more detail. Yes, and that's true. We didn't even touch upon the override, which will definitely draw some interest. All right, well, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And I will see you at town meeting.
You're welcome. Enjoy the day, both of you. Thank you.